this is part of our territory. The Lean Ko archipelago formed 4.5 million years ago, a tiny, isolated cluster of islands in the open sea. This place has no arable land or freshwater sources, nor does it hold significant economic value. However, for South Korea and Japan, the Kuril Islands hold immense significance in terms of sovereignty. The two Northeast Asian countries both assert sovereignty over this archipelago. To date, this dispute remains unresolved and has become a hotspot in the region. So which country does the Liancourt Rocks truly belong to? Is it South Korea or Japan? Today, let's take just 5 minutes to explore this remote land together. A tiny archipelago standing solitary amidst the vast expanse of the sea. The Liancourt archipelago derives its international name from Le Lion Côte, the name of a French whaling ship. The ship sank after hitting a submerged rock in 1849. The crew of this ship were the first Europeans to explore and map the archipelago. Solitary Island, Bamboo Island. The Liancourt Rocks group comprises 91 geographical features, including 37 islands along with coral reefs and submerged rocks. The total area of the entire region is 18,745 hectares. Among these, only 2 islands are inhabited, Seodo and Dongdo. Western Island. The Japanese call them Ochima and Mekima, which mean male island and female island. The 2 islands are about 150 meters apart, with the western island being larger, covering approximately 8.864 hectares. This place features a 168.5-meter high mountain peak and numerous caves along the coastline. Dong Island is slightly smaller, covering only 7.33 hectares. Here, there is a vertical cliff standing 10 to 20 meters high, along with 2 large caves leading out to the sea. Like a volcanic crater nearly 100 meters high. However, the most unique feature is a slope shaped exactly like the Korean peninsula. Although the 2 islands and the surrounding islets appear separate, but in reality, they are actually part of a volcanic mountain rising above the sea surface. From the seabed up, this mountain is about 2,000 meters high. Because it is located in a remote area and has a rather modest size. The Lean Ko archipelago has a typical oceanic climate, significantly influenced by warm ocean currents. This area has an average annual rainfall of about 1,240 millimeters, primarily concentrated in the winter season. Meanwhile, the average annual temperature is around 12 degrees Celsius. In January, temperatures can drop to around 1 degree Celsius at their lowest, and sometimes it even snows. August is the warmest month with an average temperature of around 23 degrees Celsius. This area frequently experiences strong winds, with an average annual wind speed of 4.3 meters per second. In winter and spring, the northwest wind often blows strongly. In summer and autumn, the southwest wind blows predominantly. Gyeongmu often has cloudy weather, with over 160 overcast days and around 150 days of rain or snowfall per year. Thus, on average, there are only about 45 sunny days per year. Moreover, due to the presence of numerous underwater rocks in this area, ships cannot dock safely if the waves are higher than 3 to 5 meters. Therefore, on average, each ferry can only dock about once every 40 days. The Liancourt archipelago was formed from basalt rock through volcanic activity, creating a unique natural landscape. Here, there is only a thin layer of soil and moss covering the surface. However, this place still boasts significant biodiversity with the presence of 49 plant species, 107 species of birds along with 93 species of insects. Scientists have also identified numerous marine species during their research. It includes 160 species of algae and 368 species of invertebrates. Minke whales, killer whales, and dolphins frequently migrate through this area due to the abundant food supply. Human impact on the Liancourt archipelago before the 20th century was scarcely documented. However, documents from both Korea and Japan confirm that the people of both countries cut down trees and hunted sea lions to the point of driving the species to extinction. In the early 1970s, Liancourt Island was a barren land. To improve the environment, the Koreans carried out tree planting and vegetation restoration efforts to green the island. Under international law, vegetation is one of the key factors in determining whether an offshore landmass qualifies as a natural island. or it could be coral or submerged rocks. Located at 37 degrees 14 minutes 30 seconds north latitude, 131 degrees 52 minutes east longitude. The Leoncourt rocks are located approximately 217 kilometers from the coast of South Korea and about 212 kilometers from Takeshima Island, Japan. South Korea's Ulleungdo Island is the closest to Yeonpyeongdo, only about 87 kilometers away. From Ulleungdo, on clear and cloudless days, one can see Leoncourt. For Japan, the Oki Islands are the closest land to the southeast, located 157 kilometers from Leoncourt. At such a great distance, no matter the weather, someone standing at Oki would not be able to see this group of islands. Currently, the Leoncourt rocks are a focal point of tension in South Korea-Japan relations, as the two countries have been disputing sovereignty over this area for many years. The history of the deserted archipelago. Leoncourt was originally a desolate archipelago, devoid of human habitation. Ulleungdo has had traces of human habitation since the first millennium BCE, where a kingdom known as Yusan once flourished. The people here primarily live by fishing and piracy, with Silla, a kingdom located in the eastern part of the Korean peninsula, being one of their frequent targets. In 512, General Izabu was sent by the Silla king to conquer the island nation of Yusan. He came up with the idea of crafting giant wooden lions and loading them onto the warships. Ysa-Bu threatened to release lions if the people of Yusan refused to surrender. Faced with the strange creature, the people of Yusan had no choice but to submit and request to become vassals of the Silla kingdom. However, this small island maintained its existence as an autonomous land until the 10th century, when it lost its independence and was incorporated into the territory of Goryeo. However, due to the frequent raids by Japanese pirates in this region, the court was forced to relocate the population inland for safety. This led to a gradual decline in the population of Ulleungdo. By the year 1412, during the reign of King Taejong of the Joseon dynasty, the island was home to 15 households with a total population of 86 people. Here, there are many precious products such as tea, seal fur, coarse linen, wool and silk, and ginger. In 1592 and 1598, Japan invaded Korea twice. From then on, Ulleungdo became a desolate island, devoid of human presence. The coastal waters here are rich in seafood, especially abalone and ocean fish, while the island is abundant in medicinal herbs and wild ginseng. Therefore, North Korean fishermen frequently visit this area. Japanese fishing boats also frequently appear in these waters to catch fish. In 1693, 2 Korean fishermen, and Chombok and Bak Eo-dun, were captured. The relationship between North Korea and Japan, already strained since the invasion, has now become even more tense because of this. In January 1696, the Tokugawa shogunate issued an order to the So clan, the rulers of Tsushima Island. Specifically, Ulleungdo is about 160 miles from Oki but only about 40 miles from Korea. Therefore, it is an island belonging to the neighboring country. From now on, the Japanese are not permitted to come to Ulleungdo due to the tense relations between Japan and Korea. Moreover, this island holds no significant value. Although Japan did not mention the Leoncourt rocks in the ban, but no Japanese were legally permitted to enter this area until the shogunate regime ended. Thus, in reality, North Korea is the party that possesses Uiryongdo, and this has been acknowledged by Japan. However, ownership of Leoncourt remains a highly contentious issue. According to Korean scholars, the islands located northeast of Ulleungdo symbolize the Leoncourt rocks. Thus, this demonstrates that the island group was under Korean sovereignty during that period. Japanese scholars oppose this view, asserting that Leoncourt was actually located in the southeast of Ulleungdo, but not in the northeast direction as recorded in the map. In 1877, the Supreme Council of Japan ordered the proclamation that Ulleungdo and another island do not belong to this country's sovereignty. South Korea asserts that the Leoncourt rocks are a separate island, but the Japanese government has yet to respond to this issue. During this period, Japan was also entering a phase of industrialization and modernization of the country, making remarkable progress in all aspects and surpassing China to become the leading power in Asia. By 1903, Nikai Yoroburo, a fisherman from the coastal region of Shimane Prefecture, moved to the Lian-Kuo archipelago to live. A year later, he applied to join this island group, and was granted an exclusive license to exploit sea sand in this area for a period of 10 years. The Japanese Ministry of Internal Affairs expressed concern by asserting that the Liancourt Islands belong to South Korea's sovereignty. The intrusion will escalate tensions in the bilateral relations between the two countries. However, according to information from the Navy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the incursion will bring economic benefits and not cause any issues. In 1905, the Japanese government officially declared the Senkaku Islands as uninhabited territory. And there are also no traces left to prove that this place was ever invaded by foreign powers. Therefore, this land was originally unclaimed until a Japanese man named Nakai Yoraburo settled there. Therefore, this country has the right to annex the Liancourt Rocks in accordance with international law. In reality, the occupation held immense significance for the Japanese Empire at that time, because they are at war with Russia, while also being affected by Japan's foreign policy. Korea is regarded as the Western defensive line to prevent invasions from foreign forces. Upon learning of the incident, the Korean embassy strongly condemned the matter. But nothing was achieved, as the country itself had become a vassal of Japan. In 1910, Korea was fully annexed and became a colony of the Japanese Empire. For 35 years after that, the people on the Korean peninsula endured brutal exploitation and developed a deep hatred for the Japanese. In 1945, the Japanese Empire was defeated in World War II. But they remain adamant about maintaining control over the Wuliangdu Island and the Liangcourt archipelago with U.S. support. By June 1948, after notifying the Japanese government, 29 American B-29 bombers took off from Kadena Air Base on Okinawa Island. The aircraft dropped 76 bombs on the Liangcourt archipelago during the training exercise. According to the South Korean government, at least 16 civilians were killed in the incident. However, many other estimates suggest the actual number is significantly higher, potentially reaching hundreds. South Korea not only claims sovereignty over Ulleungdo Island but also asserts its sovereignty over the Liancourt Rocks. This country also claims sovereignty over Japan's Tsushima Island based on historical grounds. However, that is completely absurd because this island has always been part of the nation's territory. The sun has risen since the 7th century, and for thousands of years since, tens of thousands of Japanese people have lived in this land. Subsequently, the San Francisco Treaty was signed in 1951, while the Senkaku Islands, referred to as Tsushima by Vietnam, remained under Japanese sovereignty. Ulleungdo Island has been returned to South Korea, but the Liancourt Rocks were not included in that list. The occupied territory must be returned. This is also why Japan asserts its sovereignty over these islands. They claimed that Koreans in Uliangdu could not see the Liancourt Islands because the forests there were too dense. Koreans were also unaware of this island group before the 20th century, as clearly evidenced by the absence of related documents. Ultimately, South Korea lacks the naval capability to approach the Liancourt Rocks. However, Ambassador Kim Kai rejected Japan's claims, citing the inability to see the Liangkuo Island group. The treatment of Ulleungdo has been recorded in history and verified both theoretically and through practical observation. The Korean people were able to travel from the mainland to Ulleungdo as early as the 6th century at the latest. Since ancient times, they have taught the Japanese advanced shipbuilding and maritime techniques. After much debate, by 1952 the South Korean government officially recognized the Liancourt Rocks as part of its maritime territory. Peace boundary. Therefore, they deployed their Coast Guard forces to occupy this archipelago. However, by September 1952, the U.S. still conducted bombing drills in this area, but fortunately, there were no casualties. Following this incident, the U.S. introduced new measures to appease Japan and South Korea. The Washington government assessed that Seoul had used force to illegally occupy the Liancourt Rocks, long recognized as sovereign territory of Japan. Consequently, the relationship between the two neighboring countries regrettably became strained. The United States could not pressure South Korea to return Takeshima to Japan, so it encouraged the two countries to bring the case to the International Court of Justice to resolve the dispute conclusively. Subsequently, in September 1954 and March 1962, Japan twice proposed bringing the case before the International Court of Justice, but South Korea rejected both proposals. Japanese fishermen continued to fish in the waters around the Senkaku Islands, but they always faced the risk of being detained. According to a report from the Japan Coast Guard, between 1947 and the end of 1965, South Korea seized a total of 327 vessels and 3,911 fishermen. Afterwards, 142 ships and 3,903 civilians were returned, but 182 other ships were not repatriated, and 8 people were confirmed dead. In 1965, after a prolonged period of tension that inflicted heavy losses on both countries, Japan and South Korea decided to normalize diplomatic relations. The issue of the Lean-Caught archipelago was resolved as follows. S sovereignty claims over the small islands while not opposing the other side. Second, if any fishing zones are demarcated in the future, both countries may use the Lean-Caught rocks as their own territory to determine the boundaries. Where the two borders intersect shall be considered the shared territory. Third, the situation of South Korea controlling the small islands will remain unchanged, but the country will not increase police forces or build additional new facilities. Finally, the two countries committed to upholding the agreement they had reached. Infrastructure in Lean-Caught. Comfort women. This refers to the women who were forced into sexual slavery for the Japanese military during World War II. Initially, the Tokyo government denied all responsibility. This infuriated Seoul, and tensions between the two sides quickly escalated, encompassing every issue from the colonial era, including the dispute over the Lean-Caught rocks. The South Korean government has decided to construct a series of new projects in this area, disregarding the regulations stipulated in the treaty signed in 1965. Mostly located on Dawn Island, the most important structure is the pier, completed in November 1997 with a length of 80 meters and a width of 1945 m. This port can accommodate ships with a load capacity of up to 500 tons. Not only that, but Korea also renovated the old lighthouse. With its 15-meter-high light tower, the beacon can shine as far as 40 kilometers. In addition, there are two 75 kilowatts diesel generators along with solar panels with a capacity of 15 kilowatts. South Korea also built a 658 square meters residential building, providing enough space for about 40 Coast Guard personnel to work. Additionally, an automatic weather station was installed to measure temperature, wind direction, wind speed, and hourly rainfall, then transmit the data to the center via wireless communication devices. Additionally, 2 satellite antennas were installed on this archipelago in June 2000, enabling residents to easily access communication and internet services. It turns out that both major telecommunications companies in Korea have installed mobile base stations in this area. Dawn Island has a 400 square meters helicopter airport, but this area is exclusively for the Coast Guard's operations and is not open for tourism purposes. Unlike Dawn Island, which is home to about 40 Coast Guard personnel and welcomes tourists, Tay Island is primarily a residential area with some government workers, so its infrastructure is quite limited. This area has only one building spanning 373 square meters, along with 2 backup generators with a capacity of 50 kilowatts each. The Lean-Caught archipelago has a freshwater reserve of 1.1 to 1.2 cubic meters per day, but the spring water here is contaminated by bird droppings. Therefore, in 2007, desalination plants were built. The plant on East Island has a capacity of 28 cubic meters of water per day, while the plant on West Island, where fewer people live, produces only 4 cubic meters of water per day. Thanks to a series of newly built infrastructure, the lives of the local people have become much more convenient and comfortable. In 2018, the Yeonpyeong Islands were home to 2 civilians and 3 officials from the South Korean Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. 3 lighthouse keepers take shifts living on the island alongside 37 officers and soldiers of the Coast Guard Force. Among them were 2 civilians, Mr. Kim Sung-doo and Mrs. Kim Shin-yo. In 1991, the couple moved to Tay Island to settle. By October 2018, Kim Sung-doo passed away, and his son Kim Shin-yo became the last civilian still living on the archipelago. In the future, the South Korean government hopes that families will choose this place as their settlement location. Although the ferry terminal was completed by the end of 1997, the South Korean government still discouraged people from traveling to this area because the Liancourt Rocks are a natural reserve. In 2004, this island group welcomed only 1,597 visitors. However, on March 16, 2005, the government of Shimane Prefecture, Japan, unexpectedly and unilaterally declared sovereignty over the Liancourt Rocks. They also decided to hold an annual Takashima Day to raise domestic public awareness about this disputed island group. Since March 24, 2005, the South Korean government has officially permitted the expansion of tourism activities here. Therefore, the number of tourists for the year reached 41,134 visits, a 25-fold increase compared to the previous year. From then on, the number of tourists visiting the Liancourt archipelago continuously increased, reaching 280,312 visitors to these islands by 2022. To reach this place, you first need to get to Ulleungdo Island, the nearest inhabited island, located about 87 kilometers away. Depending on weather conditions and sea state, the ferry ride usually takes about 40 minutes. Here, you can admire the natural beauty and enjoy the local specialty of freshwater shrimp. The year 2005 saw escalating tensions in relations between the two East Asian nations when Japan's Shimane Prefecture government abruptly asserted sovereignty over the Liancourt Rocks. The Changwon City Council in South Korea has affirmed that Tsushima Island is part of their sovereign territory. And the heated dispute truly erupted in mid-April 2006, after Japan announced plans to send 2 survey ships to the area. This event took place just before an important international meeting, as South Korea prepared to officially announce the names of small islands within its territorial waters. South Korea has deployed 20 patrol ships to the area and bluntly warned of the risk of conflict if Japan continues to send vessels into waters that Seoul claims as its sovereign territory. Finally, after 2 tense days of negotiations, both sides made certain concessions to avoid the risk of conflict. Japan has temporarily halted its survey plan, and South Korea has also agreed not to officially announce the names of these islands yet. But tensions flared again in early May 2006, following South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun's rather sharp televised speech. S act of unilaterally asserting sovereignty over Dokdo Island is essentially a denial of Korea. This is not an issue we can easily accept or surrender to, no matter how high the cost or how great the sacrifice may be. President Roh Moo-hyun's speech also touched on the past, when Japanese fascists invaded, causing immense loss and suffering for the people of the Korean peninsula. According to experts, one of the reasons for the escalating tensions stems from the internal pressure President Roh Moo-hyun is facing. He has been criticized for taking an overly conciliatory approach in his policy toward Japan. Japan received President Roh's criticism with some surprise, but Prime Minister Koizumi Junichiro affirmed that the government would respond calmly. Relations between the two countries grew increasingly tense in 2008 when 50 members of the South Korean National Assembly, equivalent to 1/6 of all legislators, jointly proposed a demand for Japan to return the island of Tsushima. By 2010, 37 South Korean lawmakers called for a study on retaking the island, causing relations with Japan to become extremely tense. Although Tsushima's sovereignty has been clearly established, the history of the Liancourt archipelago is far more complex. As of August 10, 2012, South Korean President Lee Myung-bak became the first head of state to visit the Dokdo Islands. Just 11 days later, Japan proposed bringing the issue to the International Court of Justice. This was a rare move by Tokyo after 50 years, but as with the 2 previous attempts, Seoul once again firmly rejected the proposal. The U.S. State Department declared that Washington maintains a neutral stance on the issue of the Liancourt Islands, while supporting all negotiation efforts between South Korea and Japan to reduce bilateral tensions. Korea's precious archipelago. Amid the vast ocean, despite having no arable land or freshwater sources, the tiny Liancourt Rocks hold immense strategic significance for South Korea. This explains why, for many years, South Korea has resolutely refused to concede to Japan in the sovereignty dispute over this area. This archipelago lies at the convergence of warm and cold ocean currents, boasting a diverse ecosystem and abundant marine resources such as seaweed, crabs, snails, shrimp, and many high-value fish species. Although there is no specific data on oil and gas reserves, the waters around the Lincott Islands contain approximately 600 million tons of methane hydrate, a strategically significant resource for the future. Moreover, this archipelago guards the Sea of Japan and holds an extremely strategic position for South Korea. Notably, it was the first territory invaded by Imperial Japan, so reclaiming it would be a major victory for the Seoul government, thereby affirming the nation's powerful resurgence. Reunification is one of the few issues North Korea supports South Korea on. However, if Pyongyang feels threatened by Seoul growing closer to Tokyo, its media will immediately report on it to drive a wedge between Japan-South Korea relations. Similarly, China and Russia often exploit these disputes to drive a wedge between America's two allies. In May 2022, Mr. Jun Suk-jaeon officially assumed office as the president of South Korea and actively worked to improve relations with Japan. The two countries made joint efforts to overcome past disagreements while focusing on addressing shared security challenges, such as issues related to China and North Korea. The United States welcomed the improvement in South Korea-Japan relations and regarded it as a key factor in ensuring regional stability. However, most recently on April 30, 2024, the Tokyo government voiced opposition to the visit of a South Korean parliamentary delegation to the Liancourt Rocks, while reaffirming that the islands are an inherent part of Japanese territory. Currently, Japan is striving to revive nationalism in response to China's rise. However, this move has further heightened tensions with South Korea, a country that was under Japanese colonial rule for 35 years. For these two East Asian nations, the past remains a major and nearly insurmountable barrier, while that dispute is merely the tip of the iceberg. Above is the full overview of the maritime island dispute between South Korea and Japan. If you'd like us to explore other topics, please leave a comment below the video. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next episodes.